abandoned mail-order bride, sat on a crate at the station, unaware the cowboy was coming for her. In July 1880, the sky above Montana was a wide, endless blue, touched with golden sunlight and the soft scent of dry grass. The land stretched, for miles wild and open, with nothing but wooden fences, old telegraph poles, and the sound of the wind whispering through the hills. A train whistled sharply as it pulled away from the small station, leaving behind dust, silence, and one woman, sitting alone on a wooden crate. Her name was Frances Kessler. She wore a simple brown dress faded from travel. A small beat-up suitcase rested beside her feet. Her hands, gloved and shaking a little, held a crumpled letter. Her eyes were red from the long train ride. Or maybe, from something more. She had come a very long way, from Missouri to Montana, believing she was coming to start a new life. Frances was a mail-order bride. She had never met Everett Collins, the man who promised her love, a home, and land to build, a future. They had only exchanged letters. His words had been quiet, polite, and full of hope. He had said he was a farmer, a good man, needing a wife. Someone strong, someone kind. Frances thought she could be that woman. She had no family left. Her parents had passed. Her little sister had married and moved far away. Frances had worked hard as a dressmaker in Missouri, but life felt small, heavy, and without much light. So when Everett's letter came, it felt like a chance. A beginning. She sold what little she had, saved every penny, bought a simple ticket, packed her few belongings, and took the long journey west with one dream in her heart: to be wanted, to be chosen, to belong. But as the train disappeared into the horizon, her heart began to sink. No one had come for her. The station was quiet. A few strangers passed by. None looked her way. A dog barked in the distance, chasing nothing. The wind picked up, a little dust swirling it around her feet. She waited and waited. An hour passed, then another. Finally, the station master, a kind old man with a thick mustache and a limp, stepped outside. He looked at her, then cleared his throat gently. "Are you Miss Frances Kessler?" She stood up quickly, hope jumping in her chest. "Yes, sir, I am." He held out a small note. "This came in this morning by wire. It's from someone named Wyatt Ellison. Said he's kin to Everett Collins." Frances took the paper, her hand suddenly cold. She opened it slowly. The words were simple and heavy. "Everett Collins very ill. Not able to come. Please wait. Wyatt Ellison will arrive soon." Her heart dropped. Everett was sick, too sick to come. She sat back down on the crate, her legs weak. The dreams in her head, of meeting Everett, of starting a new life, felt like glass breaking inside her. What was she supposed to do now? She didn't know Wyatt Ellison. She didn't even know Everett, not really. Was she supposed to trust a stranger in a strange land? Her fingers gripped the edge of the crate. The sun was high now, hot on her face. Her lips were dry. Her mind felt cloudy with fear. She looked out at the land. It was big, empty. It made her feel small and forgotten. Maybe she had made a mistake. But what Frances didn't know, what she couldn't even guess, was that someone had already seen her letter. A man who had lived with quiet pain. A cowboy who had lost someone too. Wyatt Ellison had read Everett's message, and when he saw the date, he knew. Frances was already on her way. Now he was riding fast across the hills, wind in his hair and dust at his back. He didn't talk much. He didn't trust much. But something about this woman, this brave stranger who had crossed miles to find a better life. He couldn't let her sit there alone. Frances sat on that crate with her head low and her heart hurting. She didn't know that Hope was coming, on horseback, with a past of his own, and maybe, just maybe, a future for them both. Frances sat at the station, still waiting, still unsure. The sun had moved across the sky. It was no longer early morning. Shadows stretched long over the wooden platform. Frances shifted on the crate, her legs sore, her hands folded tightly. In her lap, Her suitcase had dust on it now. A fly buzzed around her bonnet. Still, no one came. She read the telegram again. The words hadn't changed. Everett Collins very ill. Not able to come. Please wait. Wyatt Ellison will arrive soon. But how soon was soon? Was Wyatt coming by horse? Was he even coming at all? What if it was a trick? What if no one came, and she was truly alone in this strange land? Her stomach growled, but she didn't feel like eating. She had only a piece of dry bread left in her bag, and even that felt too heavy to swallow. She felt ashamed and foolish. Was this what starting over looked like? Sitting alone, dusty and forgotten, on a wooden crate in the middle of nowhere. Frances blinked back tears. She was not weak, but even the strongest hearts could ache. Suddenly, the sound of fast hooves cut through the quiet. A horse galloped toward the station, brown and tall, carrying a rider in a dusty hat. The man slowed as he came closer, pulling his horse to a stop just feet from where she sat. He climbed down slowly, removing his hat with a quiet nod. His boots hit the dirt softly. His shirt was worn, his face rugged from sun and time. He had gray eyes that looked serious but not cold. "Miss Kessler?" he asked, voice deep and calm. Frances stood, brushing dust from her skirt. "Yes, that's me. I'm Wyatt Ellison, Everett's cousin." Her breath caught in her chest. This was the man from the telegram. "Is Everett?" she began. "Sick," Wyatt said simply. "Fever took him fast. He's in bed. Weak. I found your letters on his table. Saw the date. I knew you'd already be on the train. Didn't want you waiting here alone." Frances looked at him closely. He didn't seem the type to write letters or make promises. He looked like a man used to fixing things with his hands, not words. Still, there was something honest in his eyes. "I appreciate you coming," she said quietly. He nodded. "It's a long ride. I have a wagon tied out past the hill. I can take you to the ranch. It's Everett's place, but I help him run it. You're welcome there. For now." Frances looked around one last time. She had come so far for Everett. Now she didn't know where she stood, but she had no better place to go. "All right," she said. "Let me grab my suitcase." Wyatt picked it up before she could. "It's not light work coming out west," he said. "You're brave for trying." She didn't reply, but her heart felt warmer than it had in hours. They walked together to the wagon. It was old, the wheels creaking but strong. Wyatt helped her climb up. The road ahead looked dry, bumpy, and long. As they rode through open fields and hills, Frances watched the land. It was wild and big, so different from the quiet town back in Missouri. There were cattle in the distance, and the air smelled of grass and dust. Wyatt didn't speak much, but every so often he looked her way, as if checking to make sure she was still okay. She wanted to ask him things, about Everett, about the ranch, about what was expected of her now. But the questions stuck in her throat. Instead, she just listened to the steady sound of hooves and wagon wheels. After a long while, Wyatt finally said something. "I lost my wife 2 winters ago," he said simply. "Snowstorm came fast. She didn't make it back from the creek." Frances looked at him, surprised he had spoken so openly. "I'm sorry," she said gently. He nodded. "Wasn't easy after that. Ain't been easy since." The silence after those words was heavy but not uncomfortable. Frances understood that kind of loss. The feeling of something ending before it truly began. Maybe that's what this was. 2 people with past hurts, riding together toward something unknown. Maybe it wasn't the life she planned, but it was still life. And for the first time all day, Frances didn't feel quite so alone. The sky above them stayed bright and wide, and the wind carried the sound of the wagon forward, toward the ranch, toward something new. And though Frances didn't know what waited at the end of the road, she was ready to find out. Frances Kessler had arrived at the ranch, but nothing felt like home yet. The land around Wyatt Ellison's ranch was wild and quiet. Tall grass danced in the wind, and fences stretched far in every direction. The sky looked bigger than any sky. Frances had ever seen. But even with all this space, she felt trapped. Wyatt helped her down from the wagon. He pointed toward a small cabin next to the barn. "That one was meant for Everett and his wife," he said. "He started building it last year. It's not finished, but it's safe. You can stay there." Frances looked at the little house. The door creaked when she opened it. Inside was a single bed, a chair, and an old stove. There were no curtains on the window, and the floor was dusty, but it was dry and it didn't smell bad. She nodded quietly. "It'll do." The next few days passed slowly. Frances tried to help around the ranch, but nothing came easy. She didn't know how to saddle a horse. She spilled feed and burned biscuits. One afternoon, she tried to fetch water, but the bucket slipped and cracked her foot. She limped back to the house, hot tears in her eyes. Wyatt watched from a distance. He never said much, but he was always there, fixing the barn roof, feeding the animals, carrying wood with ease. He worked like a man who didn't stop thinking and maybe didn't want to feel. Frances began to wonder, was this all a mistake? She had come for Everett, but he hadn't even been able to write her back. He stayed in the main house, sick and quiet, barely eating. Frances tried to speak with him once, but he only looked at her with sad eyes and said, "I'm sorry." She didn't blame him, but she didn't know what to do now. Every morning, she woke before the sun. She boiled water, tried to sweep, and helped Wyatt with small tasks. They hardly spoke, but she noticed things. He always filled her water bucket before she needed it. He left a jar of honey on her windowsill. When her boots tore, he fixed them without asking. Still, the silence between them felt heavy. Then came the storm. It rolled in fast, dark clouds covering the sun, winds howling through the fields. Rain came hard, drumming against the roof. Frances had hung wet clothes on the line earlier. As the wind picked up, she rushed outside, trying to grab them before they flew away. The ground was slippery. She slipped in the mud, falling hard on her side. Her dress was soaked. Her hands were scraped. But she held tight to the last sheet. "Stubborn thing," she whispered, more to herself than the cloth. That's when Wyatt appeared. He was already soaked, his hat pulled low, his coat flapping in the wind. He didn't yell. He didn't ask why she was out in the storm. He just reached down and helped her up. His hand was strong and steady. "You're bleeding," he said, seeing the scrape on her palm. "It's nothing," Frances said quickly. He didn't argue. He just took her back to the cabin and wrapped her hand in a clean cloth. He moved slowly, carefully, as if her skin was something precious. For a long moment they didn't speak. The only sound was the rain. Finally, Frances broke the silence. "I'm not good at any of this," she said. Her voice was small. "I don't know how to live out here. I thought I could, but I feel like I'm failing." Wyatt looked at her, really looked. "You showed up alone," he said. "In a place you've never been. You've worked hard every day since. That's not failure, Miss Kessler. That's courage." Frances blinked. No one had ever said that to her before. He continued, softer now. "You remind me of the land out here. Quiet, strong, not easy to break." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. That night, as the storm faded and stars appeared, Frances sat by her window and thought about Wyatt's words. She wasn't Everett's bride anymore. That chapter had ended before it began. But maybe, just maybe, a new chapter was waiting to be written. And maybe it had already started, with one kind cowboy, one muddy day, and one quiet shared moment that changed everything. The storm had passed, but something inside Frances had changed forever. The next morning, the air was clean and fresh. Rain had washed the dust from the grass, and the sky looked brighter than it had in days. Frances stepped outside her little cabin with a quiet smile. Her hand was still sore, but she didn't feel weak anymore. Something in her heart had shifted. She started each day with purpose now. She learned how to carry water without spilling it. She learned to braid rope, clean, tack, and even ride a horse without falling off. Wyatt watched her closely, though he didn't say much. But when she finished a task right, he would nod once, and that little nod meant more to Francis than 100 words. Everett's health got worse with each passing week. Francis brought him broth and soft bread, sat by his bed, and read from the Bible when he couldn't sleep. He never asked for anything, but his eyes always softened when he saw her. One night, Everett whispered something as she tucked the blanket around him. "I knew you'd make a good wife," he said weakly. "I just didn't think it would be for someone else." Francis didn't know what to say. She had come for him, but fate had led her somewhere else. It led her to Wyatt. And now, her heart was starting to follow. One day, Francis stood near the cottonwood trees by the creek, watching the leaves move in the breeze. Wyatt walked over, carrying a smooth wooden bench he had made with his own hands. He placed it under the tallest tree and wiped his brow. "For you," he said. "Thought you might like a place to sit and think." Francis stared at it. No one had ever built her anything before. She looked at him, her eyes soft. "Why did you do this?" Wyatt hesitated, then said, "Because you stayed. You could have left. No one would have blamed you, but you stayed. You worked hard. You cared for Everett when most would have turned away." "I didn't have anywhere else to go," she whispered. "You could have gone anywhere, but you stayed here. That means something." There was a pause. The wind gently lifted her hair. Then Wyatt spoke again, slower this time. "Francis, I never thought I'd love again. After my wife, I didn't think my heart could hold anything else. But every day you've been here, you've proved me wrong." Francis's breath caught, her eyes filled with tears. He stepped closer. "I'm not asking you now. I'm just telling you. If you ever feel the same, if you ever want this place to be your home, not because you have to, but because you want to, I'd be proud to share it with you." Francis reached for his hand. She didn't say much, but the way she held it tightly, gently said everything. Weeks passed. Everett quietly passed away one calm night, with Francis and Wyatt at his side. Francis wept softly. Wyatt held her as the fire burned low, and they sat in silence, honoring a man who brought them together in a way no one could have expected. By the time the first snow touched the ground, Wyatt and Francis stood hand in hand by the creek, a preacher between them. There were no big crowds. Just a few ranch hands, a dog, and the whispering trees. Francis wore a simple dress and held a bouquet of wildflowers. Wyatt wore a clean shirt and boots polished for the first time in years. They said their vows under the open sky. There was no grand music, no long speeches. Just two hearts that had found each other through dust, rain, and quiet moments. After the ceremony, Wyatt led her to the bench. He smiled and said, "I built it for you to rest. But now it's where I hope we begin." Francis sat looking at the land, the cabin, the barn, the sky, and the man beside her. She no longer felt like a mail-order bride. She felt like a woman who had survived heartbreak, learned strength, and discovered real love. The journey had been long and full of pain. But in the end, it brought her home. Life doesn't always go the way we plan. Sometimes the road we take leads to sorrow, silence, and fear. But if we keep going, if we stay brave, kind, and open, we may find something better than we imagined. Francis came to Montana looking for love. She found something greater. She found a place to belong and a cowboy who saw her heart and stayed.